A reading from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 9, verses 28 through 36. Now, about 8 days after these sayings, Jesus took with him Peter and John and James and went up on the mountain to pray. And while he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly, they saw two men, Moses and Elijah, talking to him. They appeared in glory and were speaking of his departure, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now Peter and his companions were weighed down with sleep, but since they had stayed awake, they saw his glory and the two men who stood with him. Just as they were leaving him, Peter said to Jesus, "Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah," not knowing what he said. While he was saying this, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were terrified as they entered the cloud. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, "This is my son, my chosen. Listen to him." When the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone, and they kept silent, and in those days told no one any of the things they had seen.
Hi. Dear Metro, I was so thrilled when Meg called me at the start of February and asked if I would be willing to share a word with all of you today. Even more so when I realized that it was Transfiguration Sunday. Had I known what the world was going to look like today, I may have passed and gotten someone who actually went to seminary to stand at the virtual pulpit today and try to make sense of the chaos. Yet here we are together from all around the world, and here I am preaching. This sermon has been through countless drafts throughout the week, becoming a bit of a living document as the events rapidly unfolded. I thank you for holding me in grace as I share my first ever sermon. When I first read this text, what stood out to me was the phrase, "But since they had stayed awake, they saw his glory." Sorry to drop a pretty big spoiler, but circa 13 chapters after this on the Mount of Olives, Jesus' friends show that they have quite the propensity to sleep through the important bits, a trait that infuriates him. Still, I feel for them. These disciples have been traveling all over with their mysterious best friend/teacher, literally climbing mountains and traversing deserts. Their lives are exhausting, yet on this occasion, they held on and managed to push through the temptation of sleep long enough to see the light. I don't know about all of you, but life since March of 2020 has felt like an uphill hike in wet socks. There have been some moments of reprieve, but this journey has been long, and I am tired. Nothing has brought me closer to abandoning my faith entirely than people trying to tell me that God works in mysterious ways, or everything happens for a reason, or my least favorite, all according to his plan. I just can't bring myself to believe in a God who would sanction such violence and tragedy. Like the disciples, I too just want to go to bed sometimes. Things feel too hard, too big, too scary, and I feel too small and powerless to do anything at all. And it appears that many people have taken this opportunity to fall asleep. We can see this in the Don't Say Gay bill that just got passed in Florida, in Greg Abbott and Ken Paxton's condemnation of trans kids and their loving parents in Texas, the worldwide uptick of hate crimes and far-right groups, Nazis are in America, conspiracy theories abound, the us versus them mentality that continues to displace people globally, and in our own silence when racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, and all sorts of injustices happen right in front of us. All this reminds us that yes, going to sleep is an option. I think it's an option that drives God absolutely bonkers, though. Instead of believing that everything happens for a reason, I believe that God blesses us with her infinite love and creativity to make it through anything. We are not given war, disease, and hatred in a twisted effort on God's part to transfigure and transform us, but we are given the ability to choose how we transform. When tragedy arrives, will we shut our eyes and shuffle insularly into the dark, holding on to rabid individualism until the very last, Or will we keep our eyes open for opportunities to shine light, to connect, to become love? When we wake up, God can flow freely between us. Our church, that look around, is made up primarily of nice white people, allowed ourselves to grapple with what it means to be white. Shout out to Carol. We continue to examine and re-examine our role in the perpetuation of racial injustice. It is painful, like draining a repeatedly infected wound, and yet we refuse to allow it to fester. Students in Florida have been organizing creative and colorful protests in response to the Don't Say Gay bill. They're walking out of class and making their presence known. Bravery of children to stay awake when adults are trying to force them to sleep shows that they've been transfigured. 5 district attorneys in Texas put out a statement in support of trans youth and their families, assuring them that they will fight to keep the governor and attorney general from taking away their ability to freely exist and receive gender-affirming care. Globally, humanity is being shaken awake to how fragile our systems are. The citizens of Ukraine are being forced awake by the invasion of their homeland and the violation of their human rights. They are responding with their eyes wide open. Civilians have been transfigured into soldiers overnight and are organizing rapidly to defend themselves and their futures in the streets, as outgunned and outnumbered as they are. Road workers are dismantling signs to make navigation harder for Russian troops. Medics from around the world are packing up and heading into the war zone to offer their support and healing. Neighboring countries are opening their doors to over 150,000 Ukrainian refugees, further waking us up to the fact that it is possible to open our doors and welcome in a sudden influx of people displaced by war, despite what past experiences may have shown us. Russian citizens are putting themselves at serious risk and coming together by the thousands to show the world that Putin is not Russia, that they are against this war. The Russian government is doing everything they can to quash dissent, and yet here are these people facing the dire consequences with eyes wide open. They have been transfigured into activists standing up against injustice. The world is currently filled with tension and tragedy, disease and war. But it is also full of people being transfigured into prophets and healers, activists and defenders. Church, what will you be transfigured into by the hardships of this world? Thank you.